even know if this is our intro music. This came on the podcast machine that I got. Is this a stock noise or someone else's? I don't know. We'll find out.
Stephen R. Covey once said, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply." We have something to say worth listening to. This is Real Talk. Real Talk. The podcast. Telling the story and lessons learned of industry leaders, entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and the movers and shakers of the business world. Have you been told no? Have you been told that you can't do it? Have you been told that you'll never get to the next level? That noise. Yeah, we said it. We're telling you you can do it, and you can get to the next level. If others have done it, so can you. Real Talk. This is Real Talk, the podcast. And this is your host, Mason.
Yo, what is going on, everybody? It is Mason back with another episode of Real Talk. Today, our guest is a lifelong entrepreneur and innovator with a focus in sustainability. He has 9 patents, was recognized as one of AARP's Purpose Prize Fellows, was awarded United States Small Business New Product of the Year. He's the founder of the Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs and the author of the book, Ageless Startup. Start a business at any age. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Rick Terrien. Rick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Mason. Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to the conversation.
No, I mean, after kind of, perusing through your profile after I found you, I was like, man, this guy, he's been doing this for a long time. And as far as what I do, talking to people about their stories and how they got started, I'm sure that your well is deeper than most. So, tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now and what's kind of going on in your current life.
Right. Well, I've got a deep well because I've been at it a long time, and if nothing else, I'm persistent. So thanks for asking. I was able to craft a book together based on some blog writings I've did over the years during previous startups. They were all related to startups and starting new businesses. And I suddenly realized that almost all of those and things that the awards had come in for all happened after I was 45. And people just don't get that entrepreneurship is a lively, active topic for people in the second half of life. It's probably too early to start throwing statistics around, but the reality is that the majority of new startups in the United States right now are started by people who are 45 and older. And that's really not the dominant picture.
Do you think that has anything to do with whether it's like capital funding maybe that they didn't have before, or maybe they're just at a point in their life where they're like, they feel like they missed an opportunity and they're like, all right, I'm going to take it now. I don't want my life to pass me by any further. I don't want to look back 10 years from now and say, I wish I would have.
Right. I think it's a mix of both of those and probably a whole bunch of data points in between. But I think what we're finding now is, and I'm having to change my pitch on this, my perspective on this. When we were in the midst of this damn pandemic, it really looked like an absolute train wreck coming out of it. And who knows what's going to be out there a couple of years from now. But right now, this isn't an, oh, woe is me scenario. We're losing our jobs and ageism is bad. There's suddenly now a huge market for talent and experience and knowledge and know-how, and especially to be able to do it on a pickup sort of a basis. It's not the perfect scenario for everybody, but for many people it is. It's almost ideal.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like there's opportunity right now. There's some major gaps that people can step up and fill. So tell us a little bit about, you also have the Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs. What's that all about?
Right. So I finished the book, and it was published last April, right in the teeth of this pandemic. And I had anticipated more of a speaking gig out of this. There's especially a lot of trade associations where this kind of discussion is really fertile ground. They're often older folks at those senior members of these things. But I had to put that speaking thing on hold, and because nobody was speaking, nobody's eating. I had 12 people at a table coughing on each other's lunches. Not really appealing. And yet, with all of these new tools and all of us connecting all over the world now at essentially no cost, the idea became obvious to start a nonprofit. We called it the Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs, and it's meant to be a peer-to-peer business development platform for people in the second half of life. I think there's a whole lot of training potential by those peers for people who are leaving jobs and considering entrepreneurship. But I also think within that member group themselves, there's a whole lot of room for ginning up new projects, new deals. And I also think that what's becoming obvious to me is that this is becoming a giant talent pool of people with top level skills in every subject. The more it grows, it's still nascent, it's still small. I'm just taking the cloak off the website this weekend. But there's probably 100 or so people involved behind the scenes right now. It's a great talent pool for reaching out and bringing projects to these good folks as well. So I really like the nonprofit aspect of this because you can run it basically with a gossamer thin management structure around it and just make it a meet and greet and business development operation for these folks.
So basically, so you go to the website, you join the website, and there you're able to interact with everybody in the ways that you kind of described how it works, kind of.
Right. So I am pulling the cloak off it right now, and I'm going to just show friends and neighbors because of probably all the misspellings I've got on there and the things that aren't exactly right. It's been a little process to get this thing birthed. But yes, there will be online slow motion discussions like in chat groups. I'm going to base that inside LinkedIn, I believe. But there's also going to be online meetings, meet and greet, where initially it will be the whole group. If it gets bigger, then we'll have to start fractaling off different pieces of this. But it's to meet and greet your friends, be able to make a presentation to peers, learn to trust new people. So when the door knocks and somebody says, I've got a project and I'm in Akron or Albuquerque or Seattle, you can turn to your network and say, okay, I need a chief marketing officer, I need a landscape specialist, whatever it takes. You've got a pre-existing network you can turn to and pick up these new projects. And I think it's a way for people to work a whole lot longer on their terms, where they're controlling their time, not turning all of their time over to one employer.
Yeah, it's really cool too, because I'm sure each of those people who are a part of this network also has their own Rolodex of contacts too. While they may not be a CMO, if you need a CMO, they probably know 3 or 4 CMOs, who are looking for something, and that referral basis is, as you know, is huge.
Yeah, I think that is the magic in these networking events and these networking structures, is that everybody that comes already brings another network. So the network doesn't grow by one; it grows by exponentially.
Right, the factor of
50, right?
Yeah,
and by opening up a communication platform among those folks, an informal one where everybody gets to meet one another and discuss and learn that kind of thing. Now there's no pressure to, you're not out just trying to sell something to somebody else. You're just putting together knowledge-based networks for when you do need those teams.
No, that's excellent. That's a super well-rounded idea. I really do like that. So tell us a little bit about, how you got to, to the point where you're connecting all these entrepreneurs, like you have to obviously have had tons of experience. Tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Well, my own entrepreneurial journey, I started in college with a bowl of change on my dresser drawer, and I started a printing business, t-shirt printing business. And I sold it when it was 25 years old, and it was still going when it was 40 years old.
That was your first one?
Yeah.
First business?
First one, right. And it was really fun. And so Mason, I do businesses, the kind of choices I make about what businesses to go into are usually based on what's broken and what other people don't want to do. It's easier that way than competing with, 40 people trying to do the same thing. So this was a broken piece of the printing market once upon a time, pre-computer, and we made banners for people. The company was called Banner Graphics. I had all the United Ways in the country and YMCAs and probably 75% of the Fortune 500. And we had colleges and universities use these for alumni weekends all over the world. We had customers on 5 or 6 continents. And it was still going when it was 40 years old. Somebody told me they passed it. They came across them out on the web, which would make it 50 years old. So that was the very first one. And I knew that computers were coming. This was, I started in the 70s, and by the 90s, it was obvious that sooner or later, these computers are going to get cheaper and cheaper. And anybody with enough money could buy enough hardware to go into that business, which is not the kind of business I typically do. Although it was funny because the best banner printers in the entire world were made by Hewlett Packard. And I used to have a little kind of whiny neighbor that would run across the street and say, Hewlett Packard's going to put you out of business. At the same time, Hewlett Packard was ordering banners from us because they were much more coming out of the printers. The same logic still applies. Sooner or later, I was going to get crushed by this.
Sure.
So it was a really good run. When I sell these businesses, it's not for stupid money. Someday that may happen, but I don't think so. I usually get a sabbatical out of it. I sell these businesses for sabbaticals. And I took a year and a half, and researched what I wanted to do next and lit the next one up. And I sold that one when it was 10 years old. And it's currently just short of 25 years old. That's the one that I was awarded a bunch of patents for. And
which business?
Won all those kinds of awards. I'm sorry, Mason, what?
Which business is this one you're talking about?
So this one is the short name, the trade name for it. And you can still find it online. It's called Smart Skim, all one word. And it was an oil skimming and separation business that worked in heavy industry, some of the heaviest, dirtiest manufacturing facilities in the world. We had customers in Beijing and Johannesburg, South Africa, and all over Asia and Europe. It was a really fun run. Still is.
So what do they do with this? Like when I read about this, and I was thinking more like ocean skimming, for oil spills or from tankers. Like, what was the application of it?
If I lived long enough, it would have gone to open water ocean spills, and I'm still ginning up my final patent around open water. But this was meant for industrial plants. And just raise your hand if you start to fall asleep here. But within these industrial plants, there's really critical manufacturing fluids. Some of them are just water with cleaners in them to keep these clean parts clean as they move through the manufacturing process. There's also some places where there's really specific needs for lubricating oils and very specialized oils. And I went into the field of inside manufacturing because it was the hardest of the problems in metal heat treating. The whole thing is built around oils that quench these really hot parts. They're putting hardness and carbon into them. To make a long story short, these pools of these critical manufacturing fluids were being contaminated with oils all over these plants. And they were just throwing them out. The best of them would, call Safety Clean or somebody legitimate to haul it away. The worst of them were draining it down the sewer out the back door. And the other problem that occurred is during the manufacturing process, these oils would burn off. So you'd go by a plant. I started this at Harley-Davidson. When I first started at Harley, it was the first guys that let me in. You could look at their smokestacks on the gear plant, on the motor plant, and they'd be just coming out black smoke, burning off carbon. But if you can sweep those oils off and keep those pools clean inside the plant, now you're not burning off carbon inside and outside the plant. So it was a really fun run. It solved a lot of really nasty problems inside those plants. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is it started out as I was working with just the most dirtiest, filthiest industrial plants on the planet. And by the time I left, we were working for Boeing and Pratt & Whitney as they were making spacecraft. It was a state-of-the-art for keeping those fluids clean in spacecraft manufacturing. So that was a pretty cool ascendancy.
I'm understanding now more what you said by you like to find industries with issues that are hard to fix. Like, I mean, I don't know any, I've never even heard of anyone who is even remotely involved in something like that. So that's starting to make a whole lot more sense, kind of your philosophy behind it. So So tell us any other big startups along the way that you're really proud of, or that that are still pumping today.
Well, sure. I was recruited to Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. I loved Pittsburgh, but I hadn't spent a lot of time here. And I was brought to help start a new nonprofit here. It's now just a little past its second birthday, about 2.5 years old. It's called Food21.org. And I'm really proud of this. It's a system to build, and we're just talking about dirty industrial plants, and now I'm talking about food. But there was an interim between those two where I learned a lot about food, and my take on everything is, how do you manufacture it? How do you process it? How do you do it cleanly, safely? How do you build out appropriate supply chains? And in food, the supply chains, everybody wants local, or they're at least regional, right? And this pandemic proved how fragile a lot of these food systems are. So the idea is why not build more regional food systems that are more sustainable? So we've been experimenting in this Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio region to build a system that can stand on its own and that serves the people in that community, those communities, but also the growers and all those little food companies that are in there that are trying like crazy to get everybody's attention. How do you raise them up? So I learned how to do that between the oil skimming business and this, and I had some pretty good success at it. I helped convert a wonderful facility back in Wisconsin before I left. It was actually owned by a Center for People with Disabilities, and we lit up this facility to do food manufacturing. And at one point, I think about when I left, I didn't run it. I was helping. I had started a nonprofit economic development agency down there. We had 35 people with disabilities working at this place with great jobs. It was the most fun I have ever had at work in my entire life. It was just a riot. Every day was something new, and every day somebody with a disability was pulling some kind of prank on me because I wasn't expecting it. And it was great. But so learning this food manufacturing part of this lower scale was something that I learned to do. It's still very imperfect. It's still hard to do. But lighting up this new organization here in Pittsburgh, this Food 21, we're really making a lot of progress. I've got a bunch of peers. I'm one of the co-founders, but I've got a bunch of peers in here doing all kinds of good work.
And the goal of that is, once you guys kind of hammer down the model, is to just keep expanding it, I'm guessing?
Probably whatever the word would be. I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis here. It's either to license it, the model, or to actually operate a model. None of us really want to be empire builders here. We want to have safe, clean foods available in a sustainable way for everybody on the planet if we can. So I've got a feeling that we'll just be showcasing this model. We're doing that now. There's a whole series of webinars that they've been doing on trying to give away this model. And it's still early, so there's plenty of time left.
So running all these companies, especially in the early stages, of the startup stages, is like, I can imagine, just I've done it before on a much smaller scale. It's the stress level is just kind of like, it never, for me at least, never goes away, because there's always something to do. There's always things you're working on. There's the wheels are always spinning. So when you take these sabbaticals and once you actually sell off your companies, what's it like to is there just a huge release of pressure? Do you feel that you need to do something? What do you do with yourself from going from 100 down to 0?
It's going to sound weird, and I think it's maybe just the way I'm wired up, but when I take the sabbaticals, my pressure on myself goes up, not down. I'm very interested in finding what's next, what's the most broken thing that I have some competence to address. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't, but it almost always universally has. There's a couple that have not become commercial. But to answer your question, I don't have a lot of pressure on me when I'm doing startups. I don't accept it, because it's just, I already accepted I'm doing something new, and I'm going to be wrong a significant amount of the time, but I just have to keep putting one foot in front of the other. So it's kind of a skill set. But when I stop and I take a break and I'm looking for the next thing, then I really start to get worried and concerned. And what am I going to do? And how am I going to do it? And who am I going to do it for? And that's when my pressure kicks in, is when I'm supposed to be relaxing. I don't relax very well.
I'm like the same kind of way. I'm like, my downtime is looking for like new projects to do, which is I'm working to find work, you know?
Right.
So have you always had that like calm, cool, collected, no pressure on me startup feel? Or, you know, in your earlier days, I mean, was that a skill set that you developed, or is that something you naturally kind of had?
I'm afraid my answers are going to sound confusing to you. I'm a professional worrier. I know this is all the health people tell you worry's bad for you. I am a professional worrier, and I'm worrying all the time. What I do with that is I translate it into writing scripts for what could happen, so that when one of those things happens, and it's usually one out of a whole bunch, and usually it's one that I haven't guessed exactly right, I've got something at least to go forward with it. So
that's awesome. Have you, in your whole career, like, you know, have you ever had like a job, you know, like an actual 9 to 5, Monday through Friday kind of slugging through it kind of thing, or have you always been on that founder's sort of side of things?
I think when I was funding Banner Graphics, when I first got out of college, I went and I kept the Banner business as a side gig, and I took a job with a startup. There was only 3 or 4 of these guys. And this was the internet in the 1970s, way before the internet was developed. There was big deal defense money in that system. It used to be called DARPANet.
Yeah.
Right. And then they released it about 1970. The military released it about 1976 or 77, and they took the DARPA, the defense part of that, off and just called it ARPANET. And they licensed just a few people around the world to use it because no one knew anything about this stuff. And
was it mostly universities kind of thing?
It was mostly universities and a few big of the research labs. Battelle Labs was in there, but it was University of Illinois, Ohio. Strikes me that Maryland might have been in it. Stanford was in it.
And that was basically just to transit large amounts of data instead of like mailing studies back and forth. They could transmit it electronically, right?
Yes, but there was a really early search version, a search feature. And this is going back, right? But I used to be able to, in Chicago, where these guys were based and where I was working out of at the time, you could walk on any corporation's door and knock on the door. I'll pick on Wrigley Gum because I did it for them a bunch of times when they were still a thing. And say, what would you like to know? And they'd say, what do you mean, what do you like to know? I said, pick a word. Pick 2 or 3 keywords. Well, I'll tell you everything that I can find on the planet Earth about those 3 words. And people would just shake their heads and say, how do you do that? Well, it was this ARPANET. And I really loved that because I could go into any corporation and of course there's something they want to know. This is like you and I Googling right now. We Google as much as we breathe. You know, you're doing these searches. Well, back then, nobody knew you could search. What do you mean internet? We didn't even have that word.
So were they paying you to do research that you were just Googling?
So the companies were paying my company that I went to work for. You asked about if I had a day job. So I had a day job for about a little less than a year. And this is my really fun part of this, is that I was able to go out and say to Wrigley or pick a Prudential Insurance and say, we'll do this research for you and I'll bring you back this research report. It was shooting fish in a barrel. I mean, nobody had, what the hell's the internet? I mean, now this sounds quaint and stupid almost. But back then, you could get on and I could search Battelle Labs and Stanford and Berkeley and Illinois and all these places and gather all of their information and print it out in a book and hand it back to them. It was a really fun run, but I got fed up with it. They changed my job.
No, but that's a super cool, like, I mean, you were part of the internet before it was even the internet. That's
like 20 years, right?
Yeah.
That was really fun.
So,
but I quit that job and getting pissed off at the owners because they changed my job description. And I said, and here's the value of having these little businesses. I had this thing as a side gig, this banner business, and I'd been working it up so that when I finally got fed up with working for somebody else, I had something. And when I was offered an ultimatum, I said, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going. Bye. And so that was my brief foray into employment.
Was that like a pivot point where you kind of knew that you would never work for anyone again, or at least as long as in your power?
Well, I came to a truism in my life, and I tell everybody, I don't know how appropriate it is, but I think it is appropriate. Everybody used to tell people in my generation that it's really scary to start your own business. And I looked at my situations as I've gone through life, and it's scarier not to have one, not to start new businesses. That's what's scary, is leaving your future in the hands of some mope that you don't know what side of the bed they're going to get up on. Doesn't mean you have to live your whole life that, but to keeping those fires burning and starting those new scripts is never a bad idea.
Are you just kind of like naturally a go-getter? Have you always been that way? Is there some sort of like motivation that does it for you? Like, what is it that you love about doing the whole start of things? It seems like it's your bug.
Yeah, I tell people a little story that I first remember as an entrepreneurship gig. And I was probably in 6th and 7th grades, going into 8th grade. We all used to have to help our families out with any kind of little side jobs you could do, mowing lawns or whatever. I picked one that was running down in the morning rush hour in between cars at the Chicago rush hour, when they back up at the stoplights. And I'd run in between the cars with Sun Times and a Chicago Tribune, and just smoke, awful pollution, 1960s cars. These were major intersections. And you'd run between them, and a man or woman would put their arm out the window and wave to you, and you'd have to take off like a bat out of hell to get there before the red light would change. But you got to keep 2 cents of every paper, plus tips. And the place you made the money was the tips. Not just doing the job, but doing the job well and interacting with customers and solving a problem for them. And frankly, I've been doing that ever since, it seems to me. In some pretty nasty locations, except Pittsburgh, which is great.
You dirty factories, 1960s downtown. Yeah, no, it sounds like you like the dirty work.
I like to do stuff that people don't want to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, but it sounds like that's your niche. That's where you excel at.
Right.
What sort of challenges did 2020 bring you? I know we touched a little bit on it earlier, but was there anything, even out in your personal life, like did you get Corona? Like, tell us a little bit about that, because I know everyone had a pretty interesting year that.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been coming out of some medical stuff, and that was in place, but I never did get Corona on this. But my mobility was significantly limited. But and I'm certainly not going to be Pollyanna and say that this was, any kind of a good thing whatsoever. It's a horrible thing. But I learned to pick up tools that were available, like we're doing now, and the Zooms and all of it, and the ways to record and the new apps. One of my tasks when I come to a new place like this is to put together a network of small food companies. Like every kind of industry, there's more muscle when you act together. There's more opportunities when you act together. So during that pandemic year 20, I was able to use all those tools and knit together. And I had started the project the year earlier, but knit together an organization of a food and beverage network here in the region that's probably got about 90 different food companies and about 90 different vendors and support companies all coming together to help each other. And Mason, I'll bet 95% of these people have never met each other, right? But we're all working, helping each other and working on new projects and referring new business to each other. And I think that would have not been as optimal without being forced into a new way of doing business.
Yeah. Have you in your tenure as an entrepreneur, have you seen a shift like this? The only thing that I can think of is maybe like the internet, like that caused a kind of a major disruption in the business world.
No, this is the biggest one. Obviously, when the internet first arrived, that was a game changer. But since then, and I've been through a couple of big recessions, the early ones in the aughts, and then this last one in 8 and 9 up through 11 and 12. Those were just brutal, and not a lot of good came out of them. And all of a sudden, I'm seeing a fair amount of good come out of this last pandemic. I don't know it's because we're, as human beings, are getting better at it. I don't know if we're learning to anticipate them. I really don't know. But, I mean, look at going into this pandemic. Everybody in my age, over 50 maybe, is worried about ageism. It just doesn't go away. It's a fact of life. And there's a lot of negative stuff around older workers. People think they're the more expensive of the cohorts, and you're paying too much. You can get 2 25-year-olds for a 50-year-old kind of a thing. But if you look up, all of a sudden, everybody's quitting their jobs. What are they calling it? The Great Resignation. People are just not taking it anymore, right? And here's the other part of this is the U.S. Census Bureau. I've researched for the book. As you can see, that entrepreneurship trend, it goes up ever so slightly, and there's ups and downs. This is since like 1990, and they got it monthly. Little tiny ups and downs, but a generally upward trend towards entrepreneurship.
Sure.
And now here this pandemic hits last year, and that trend goes like this. It goes straight up. There are now tens and tens and tens of thousands of new entrepreneurs officially in the game who have gotten business licenses and registered and are setting up, not aspirational, actually doing it. And a whole bunch of those are going to be one-person businesses. It doesn't mean they all have to do it, and it doesn't mean there's anything bad about more advanced businesses or high-tech businesses. But I'm here to make that platform work, especially for one-person entrepreneurs. And I got a really cool statistic about that.
And it sounds like, just like your new platform is set up perfectly for that. I mean, there's a huge influx among younger people, I think, too, as well as older people starting these new businesses. Personally, I think there's kind of been a stigma around being an entrepreneur. I feel like, at least like growing up, like when I was like, I want to be a business owner or whatever, people were like, oh, you gotta wait till you're older, you gotta wait till this. There's not like a lot of information. In the early 2000s, you don't like pick up a book and like read how to be a business owner. But now you can go on YouTube, I feel like, and I mean, how much time do you have? And everybody will tell you everything. I mean, these sorts of podcasts, I think, weren't happening a decade ago, and the vast amount of information that's available to people, like you said, it was kind of taught to you growing up that starting a business is scary and risky, and all the scare tactics and whatnot. And now people are like, oh look, like no, here's a video of how to do it. Like you fill out the paperwork, here you go, start small. Don't quit your job and sell your car and sell your house. Like bootstrap, build it up, and here's tens of thousands of success stories.
Right. And in addition to those things, the other part is get a network around yourself. So I tell people 3 things in this case is start small. And by that, I mean, you can come out as a one-person entrepreneur, but you need to get the equipment around you. You need to harden up. You need to get an entity around you, usually an LLC. That's the easiest. And you get the banking in place and the insurance and all of that. You start small, but you also start smart. And in my world, that means getting into networks, finding your tribes, right? Finding who you can rely on in a pinch, who you can call, and continue to grow that. So that's the starting smart part about that. And the last of those 3 is to start right now. Everybody thinks that they're going to get all their plans are just going to fall right in place. Everything takes too long. Everything takes longer than you expect. And there's just no harm in starting small, because when you try to start fast, you end up burning up a lot of money and trying to paper over problems.
And I feel like if you do, a lot of times, I've seen this happen in my own store where if you do start so fast and you don't have the correct support system and network around you, all you've done is ruin any potential opportunity to see those sorts of customers again. Like, so your customer has a bad experience, whatever it is, whatever you're selling them, entry into your network or selling them a computer at a store, like they're not coming back.
Right.
There's tons of other places to go to, and you just ruined it because you wanted to go too fast, too quick.
Right. And so the idea is, and people try to pin me down on what's this ageless, what's the time frame for it? And I can't impose a fixed numbers on anything, but I got a great review from Carl Schramm, who started the Kauffman Foundation for Entrepreneurship and grew it into this powerhouse that it is. And he called that book a must reading for career planning for anybody over 40. So what I do is I tell people they should be thinking about this at 40, they should be planning it at 45, and they should be doing something at 50. We're all going to work a lot longer in our lives, no matter what, and we might as well get those in place.
Yeah, I have discussions like this with people sometimes about we're going to work longer. We're gonna be healthier. We're gonna be more active. The idea that you're gonna turn 65 or 70 and your body's gonna start falling apart and you're gonna be in a wheelchair in a nursing home the rest of your life. And I feel like a lot of people have this kind of mindset. And the gym that I go to, there's 65 and 70-year-olds in there that you think they were 50, 45 or 50 years old. You never know. And I think between the information we have between science and health and wellness and the motivation to stay busy and whatnot, like you said, I think people are going to live longer and people are going to work longer because what else are you going to do?
And the things people are interested in and things that products and services that can be delivered from afar are almost infinite now. And you can do it with a really small teams or even by yourself. One of those statistics that came up when I was researching the book is just before the pandemic, there was 32 million total businesses in the United States. 32 million total. And of the 32 million, 25 million were one-person businesses. It's almost 80%. Now the revenues are going to be wildly different to the small side.
Sure.
But if you're one of those people doing that one-person business and you're making a contribution to a community you love or a market you love, it's really important. And those men and women never get on the covers of the business magazines. And there's nothing wrong with the people on the covers of the business magazines. I get it, as long as it's legal. But it's not the whole story. There's and again, it's not for everybody, right? A lot of people just want to be done with their job and get the hell out the door and go gardening, whatever it is. And that's fine. I get it. But there's still a whole bunch of people who want to continue to make a contribution. It's just, how do you do it? What's the safest way to do it? How do you transition?
So for you then, I don't imagine this will be your last startup. It doesn't sound like you have any plans to stop anytime soon. How far do you see this going for you? Do you see maybe this is your last one? Do you have a number on it? What do you want to see for yourself as you move forward and continue your entrepreneurial career?
So I have really high hopes for this Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs. I have it's already expanding geographically way beyond what I had anticipated. I thought about it as probably the United States, maybe Canada. I wasn't sure. And now here I'm doing podcasts in Oman and Singapore, and everybody wants to start chapters in their countries. And to have us knit those together is sort of one big neural network of competence. If that's the case, this is going to be a long run. I really like this kind of work, and I really like effective networking. I don't like just exchanging business cards and spilling drinks on each other. But actually putting deals together among people who don't necessarily know each other, but should. Man, I could ride that horse for a couple of decades.
That's all. Yeah, it sounds like this is one of those passion projects because there's no real end goal, right? There's always going to be people that need to be networked together, right? So
there's a great book out called The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, Sinek. I'm not sure I'm saying his last name right, but It's that there is no final solution to any of these things. Everything keeps getting better, or occasionally will turn worse. President Barack Obama used the metaphor of a relay race, and that all of us are just running a leg of a relay race, and we need to run it as best we can, as ethically as we can, and hand it off as cleanly as you can to the next person who wants to pick up that baton. So I consider that part of this. I'm just adding some missing pieces onto this structure, and somebody else will do better than me after this.
I love your mindset and the way that you kind of like think about things. It's very refreshing, right?
Oh,
you have you especially with you have a old school experience with a new school mindset, which is awesome.
Well, it's fun. I'm fortunate to live in these times when the internet did come to life, and especially to get that 20-year advanced peek under the hood to see what could really happen. I mean, when the internet finally got here, I was writing code that day. I mean, I was on that. I was really excited. I loved that part of it. But there's just this human contact part that I think that is in all of us, and you just need to make a place for it to come out, a safe place for it to come out. That's what I'd really like to do with this Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs. I was trying to write a terms of service for the website, and I was looking at all these lawyer things that I could put in, and my head was spinning, and it was like, shoot me, I can't do this. And so the terms of use I wrote is be nice. It was like Mr. Rogers, right? No discrimination. Awesome. Be nice to each other. Help your neighbor.
Like what did Google's used to say? Don't be evil.
Yeah, don't be evil. Right.
And I think they actually dropped it. Which I thought that was awesome. That was a really good saying. But maybe they've uncovered some evilness in their own organization. Who knows? All right. Well, wrapping up here, Rick. I want to do this thing we call it Real Talk Rapid Fire. So I'm just going to shoot you a bunch of questions. Right? They're not hard. Just first thing that comes to mind, spit it out. Don't overthink it, don't underthink it. All right.
You want one-word answers or short ones?
Whatever you want.
All right.
Netflix or Hulu?
Neither.
Cats or dogs?
Cats.
Triangle? Do you like your pizza cut in triangles or squares?
Triangles.
What was your first car?
A Ford van.
A van or a van?
It was a van, a cargo van.
Classy.
It was a party. It was a party wagon.
What's your favorite city in America?
Right now, it's Pittsburgh.
Nice. Favorite book?
Oh, I recommend The War of Art. Not The Art of War, which is that famous thing, but
Right.
The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's a really skinny book. It's written for artists, but it also includes for entrepreneurs, and it is inspiring as hell. Been out about 25 years.
Check that out. Are aliens real?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. All right. That's I haven't had that answer yet. All right. Cool. All right. Well, that's all I got for today, Rick. I appreciate you coming on today, spending some time with us. One more question: will you come back in 100 episodes? Check back in with us, tell us where you're at, and we can see all the progress you made and hear a few more stories.
Without any question. And in the meantime, if anyone wants to check out the center, it's going to be at agelessentrepreneurs.org. And that book is at ageless-startup.com.
Cool. Can you give us, if anybody else wants to get a hold of you or look you up, or do you have a website? Where can they buy your book at? Can you give us all that spiel? And I'll put it in the description as well.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to email that to you?
Yeah, email it to me as well, and I'll put it. Yeah, I can put that in the bottom.
Right.
But yeah, for anyone who's listening, let's give them a rundown.
Yeah, on the book, to find the book and see the reviews, and you can read sample chapters. It's on Amazon. It's the URL is ageless-startup.com, and that'll lead you to places to order. You don't have to do it through Amazon. There's a really good one to support local bookstores that you can buy it through, but it's also on Audible as well. It's an audiobook. And And so that's all that knowledge and information is leading into the new nonprofit, which is the Center for Ageless Entrepreneurs. And that is going to be at agelessentrepreneurs.org. And that is a 501c3 nonprofit.
Sweet. Cool. Anything else you'd like to add or put your 2 cents on?
No, thank you for doing this kind of work. This is really helpful to a lot of people, Mason. You're doing a heck of a job and providing a really good service. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, that things like that is, helps me to continue doing this. And I honestly, I really enjoy this. As a business owner myself, it's nice to be able to talk to someone, like I said, who has a deep well like you do. And who's super humble and very well articulate, very well spoken and articulate about it. So thank you so much for coming on, Rick. And hopefully we'll see you again in 100 episodes, huh?
I can't wait. Thank you.
All right, excellent, man. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Real Talk with Mason. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. We hope you've had fun. We know we did, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Mason on Instagram at Real Talk with Mason. Walter Bagehot once said, "The greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you cannot do." And we tend to agree. Till next time.